Good afternoon. How is everybody doing? As she said, my name is Libby Saylor Wright, and I am delighted to be with you this afternoon for what will be an incredible discussion with a group of dynamic leaders that just happen to be women. So many of you probably know that there are about 57% of college graduates are women. About 50% of entry-level employees are women. But as you continue to go up the corporate pipeline to leadership, that number dwindles significantly. In fact, in the food industry, you start off at 50% women in entry-level positions. By the time you get to the C-suite, it's less than 20%. And for women of color, it's less than 3%. And this is not an opportunity about attrition or motivation or any of those things that we've heard as myths before. The real reason this is happening is because of two things. The corporate pipeline is what we call leaky, right? So 50% entry, and then it leaks. But where does it happen? It happens primarily at that first promotion to manager. Women are 21% less likely to be promoted to manager. And for women of color, it's even greater. But the other thing that I find extremely interesting is that there are different words and attributions used to describe women in their performance within organizations. And those words are less flattering than the words that are used to describe men. So it starts early. But the other thing is that many of us don't recognize it. 45% of men believe that they have enough women in leadership, and remarkably, 28% of women agree. So we've got to start by acknowledging that we have an opportunity to drive women leadership. And it's important not because of only the talent, but it's also important because businesses that have women in leadership do better overall. Specifically, if you have 30% women at your leadership level, your company's net profits are 6% greater than without. So it's a talent issue, and it's also a business issue. And so we're here today to talk to some phenomenal leaders that will help us make steps towards closing that gap. So I'd like to begin by asking Abigail Pringle, the President International and Chief Development Officer of Wendy's, to please join me on stage. Abigail has held a host of leadership roles at Wendy's since joining the company in 2002, including the Chief Global Development Officer, the Chief Development Officer, Senior Vice President of Restaurant Development and Growth Initiatives, and Senior Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Planning. Next, we have Brittany Ruby Miller. Brittany is the President of Jeff Ruby Culinary Entertainment, Cincinnati's preeminent restaurant group, which manages a portfolio of high-end steakhouses, which are widely regarded as among the best in the nation. Next, we have Jane Grote Abel, who is the chairwoman of the board for Donato's Pizza and Jane's Dough Foods. And to round out our panel is Lisa Ingram, the president and CEO of White Castle System Incorporated. Lisa is the fourth Ingram family member to serve as president of this iconic company. As I stated, I am super delighted to be a part of this panel with you very established and distinguished business leaders. So thank you for joining us today. And if you can't hear us at any point, just raise your hand and we'll make sure to speak up. So to get us started, you guys are exceptional role models for women and men growing in their careers in the food industry. Can you share some insights about the importance of role models in your career and the impact of seeing or not seeing women in senior leadership positions? Brittany, will you start us off?
As I sit here and I look at my father, he was the #1 role model that I had. So I have been blessed to have been born into an organization that really encouraged women in leadership, and he was my #1 cheerleader. So I thank you, Dad, for what you gave me and always believing in me and empowering me. The second best gift that he ever gave me was a mentor that really defined my business sense. When we look at our growth and scaling our business to where we are now, 7 steakhouses, that didn't happen overnight. And so there was a man that he used to work for my father, and then he went and opened a bunch of Hiltons. So I always say I didn't have the luxury of working outside the business, but I had Hilton come to me. And so without the confidence and the mentorship and the leadership from Russell, particularly in the last probably 5 years, it definitely helped shape who I am. And I think more than anything, role models give you the confidence. I think that there's so much inside of us just through learning and being in the industry and the experience. But when you have somebody else that can hold your hand and walk you through and give you that confirmation and affirmations, it's such a vote of confidence for me that really, I think, catapulted me into my position now.
That's fantastic. Does anybody else have, Lisa, a follow-up to that?
Well, mine will be similar. Certainly my father has been a big influence. I'm sure, Jane, you would say the same thing. And I think, from a style standpoint, my father really gave me the latitude to try lots of things. And some of those things were not probably great ideas. They didn't really work, but he still was very supportive of us trying different things and letting us experiment and do well, and then sometimes maybe not do so well. And I think that's been a big thing. I think for me, I feel fortunate that I have had women leaders to look at. I worked in the computer industry right out of college, and my first director was a woman, and she was fabulous. Her name was Suzanne Garrett, and just an amazing woman. And so I feel fortunate to have that. I think in our industry, the restaurant industry is very diverse, and so we should be able to have women at all leadership positions. I know we're not where we want to be yet, but we should be able to do that because the numbers are out there. In our business, 63% of our team members are female. 75% of them are in leadership, and that's a great stat for us, but we're not yet where we want to be. 50% of them are actually diverse, which again is a wonderful stat for us, but we want to continue to make sure that we are very thoughtful about that, and how do we continue to provide opportunities for everybody to feel like they can see somebody who looks like them at the top.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So we had extensive data today from the food industry about women in the workplace study and other sources. Can you tell us how you make the case for gender diversity in your organization and what strategies you see as the most effective in expanding opportunities for women? And I'll start with you, Abigail.
Hello, everyone. It's a great question, I think, in terms of how do you connect doing the right thing to actually growing your business. And I think they are both. And I know for Wendy's, an important part of our founders' values in our company has always been about doing the right thing. So it's important, to ground that in who you are as a company or as a brand, but importantly around the reality of this disruptive marketplace and how do you stay competitive and how do you have a reflection of your consumer in your workforce. All the way from, for us in the restaurant business, from our restaurant teams, all the way up to leadership, to our suppliers and our partners. I think it's important to reflect the consumer that you have that you want to attract into your business. And for us, we did participate in the McKinsey study, and this is our 3rd year actually participating. And it's been, I think, helpful to build knowledge and awareness. And I think that's the thing I would say is the first step, is that you don't have to go all the way to bright immediately. Just start the conversation around, well, what does diversity, what does inclusion mean for our organization? And the McKinsey study, I think, started some of that knowledge and awareness. Where do we stand on our statistics, like Lisa talked about? We also have a huge percentage of women, more than 60% in our general management level. But why aren't they getting to the district management level? Why aren't they getting to the director of operations? Right? What do we do to get them into our jobs? And what do we do to do that? So I think that data is critical. And I think to the point you bring up, how do you grow? And we're all looking at how do we grow, and not just grow to tackle inflation, but grow above the rate of inflation. And to do that, you need to be disruptive. And I think the way we can do is actually go back and look inside and figure out how we leverage our best talent. And if we don't leverage our best talent, we won't get there.
Absolutely. And Jane, Abigail just made the point about the data knows, making everything people aware of what is going on and the opportunity that we have before us. In addition to making people aware, there's an opportunity to sustain women in leadership once you get them at the table. Can you talk a little bit also about how you're implementing that within your organization?
Sure. Thank you. It's great to be here. And I would say just recently we promoted 2 females into vice president roles, one our vice president of operations and a vice president of people that were internal, started when they were 15 years old with Donato. So really proud of our internal rate of growth. And I think the sustainability, one, the education, so for smaller businesses like us, if we can't do McKinsey studies or pay for them internally, the Ohio Diversity Council is a wonderful resource. And recently we've been networking with them, and it's really truly all about, are you educating yourself, looking at the numbers, making sure that you have a strategy behind it, because just like anything else, just like growing a business, if you don't put a strategy behind it and you're not intentional, it's not going to happen. You're going to continue to attract the same people. And so you have to be very, very intentional about it, not just in marketing, recruiting people, hiring people, but making sure that you have the programs that can help them take their step to the next level.
Thank you very much. So Brittany, you had what I call a very obvious wake-up moment in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it's influenced your leadership style?
I am a recovering perfectionist, and in recovery, I joke, but I strive to just be the best at everything that I could, and it was extreme. So I now strive for excellence, not perfectionism. But when I was a senior in college, I ended up changing majors through, so I wanted to graduate on time, and I took 30 credit hours in 1 quarter, and that was really dumb. Don't ever do that. But lack of sleep, basically. I was just not taking care of myself, and I had a seizure at the wheel when I should have been on the highway going 70 miles an hour. Just so happened my gas light went off, and I hung a left downtown to go to the Over the Rhine gas station, and I wound up through the public library. That was the first seizure. Then I had another one right after that, and then I had another one in my sleep. What I learned from that was that you don't have to do anything. We choose what's on our plates. And so I am very intentional now about what I call my VP MOSA, my vision, mission, purpose, objectives, strategies, and action steps for my life. If something doesn't line up with my vision statement for my family and for my business, I just say no. So there's a lot of events that I learned that you get invited to, a lot of speaking opportunities, a lot of networking opportunities. I have a very methodical way of how I decide what I say yes to and what I don't. And so for me, that's been the greatest blessing in disguise, is to now know what my boundaries are, what my limits are, and how to exercise my no muscle.
Absolutely, and that's a lesson for all people in leadership, especially women. But it turns out that those moments, those seizures, were all stress-induced. Is that correct?
Yeah, my parents were concerned, and obviously I'm at the top neurologist at UC, and it took many months to find out what was wrong with me. And at the very end, he just said, it's from stress and lack of sleep. And I really wasn't sleeping, trying to graduate on time. And I'm sure there's a lot of restaurateurs and a lot of chefs in here who know what it's like to just the grind, and you're in the weeds daily. And I can't express enough how important sleep is to our health and how important water is as well.
Absolutely. So Lisa, you have a demanding life as well. In addition to running a major company, you have a lot of other things on your plate. How do you manage, and how do you manage your stress and make time for yourself as well?
Yes, so I have 4 children and a husband who has his own CEO job and runs his own company. And so a lot of people will ask me, how do we do it all? And my first thing is we do not strive for perfection, because that is just something that is not achievable in my mind. And prioritization is really a key, back to Brittany's point. My family is obviously my number 1 priority, followed very closely by my work and my health. Those are probably the top 3 priorities. And so there are lots of things that I say no to, that I don't engage in. And I feel bad. I feel like I'm not giving back to the community enough. I feel like I'm not as good of a friend. There are lots of things that I feel like I'm not doing as good at, but I know that for my own sanity and for the priorities that I've chosen, that those are the most important 3 things. But I feel very fortunate to have a great support system. So just to give you a very relevant story, so today I wake up and my son, my 9-year-old son, is sick. He doesn't have a fever, but he definitely needs to stay home from school. My husband is out of town and my nanny has a test, and so she can't come and take care of him. And so I had to scramble to figure out, okay, so am I bringing Ryan to this so he can sit and watch me do this, or am I taking him to the office? Fortunately, my father, who is retired but lives in Florida for the first couple of months of the year because he doesn't like the cold anymore, was home because it's our big leadership conference this week, so he was in town. So my dad actually came and picked up my son from my office while I was in a meeting and brought him back to my house to take care of him until my nanny gets there. And so those are the types of things that you just have to do. You have to figure out how to lead on your support system and understand what your priorities are to know what things you can really focus on and what things you can accomplish.
So true. As I say, it does take a village. I only have one child, but we have 3 handlers for the one child to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So very
Absolutely.
good. Jane, Lisa talked a little bit about community being part of what she does, and I know that you and your company are very, very focused in the community, particularly on the South Side. Can you give us a little bit of why that's important to you and how it influences your leadership style?
Absolutely, and I think every restaurateur and I know the people up here have done great things in the community. For us, it's about what we do every single day. So part of our promise is to serve the best pizza and make your day a little better. And underneath that is about being a good neighbor. And ever since I was a little girl, standing under this sign down on the south side of Columbus on Thurman Avenue, my dad's first restaurant, we lived right behind it. What he talked about was being able to grow the business, but growing the business with love and bringing our principals to work with us and making sure that we were not only authentic to ourselves, but that we were authentic and giving back in the neighborhood. And so that is part of our story for 57 years. It's who we are. But most recently, we had a great opportunity to really take a look at the south side of Columbus when Mayor Michael Coleman called my dad and said, "Hey, didn't you grow up down here? And what are you doing now?" And so he said, "Come take a tour." So we did, and what we found was a very impoverished neighborhood. So the same neighborhood we grew up in, which was very blue collar, very thriving, 57 years ago, fell on really hard times. And it's a longer story. I'll end it with, we had a great opportunity to partner with the city, with private businesses, with nonprofits. And my dad called me, I called Tanny Crane, if you're not familiar with Crane Plastics, great group, right? Crane Group, and they were also formed on the south side. She's also one of my mentors, our mentors probably. And we said we have to do something different. So we surveyed the neighborhood and asked them what they needed in order to get out of poverty. And we did 2,700 surveys, just like a business strategy. You go out and ask your customers what they need or what they want. And so we had an opportunity to renovate an old elementary school building that is a 114-year-old building sitting there vacant for 5 years in a neighborhood that had 1 in 4 houses boarded up, 68% of the population living at 200% below poverty levels, 70% of the people that had been incarcerated moving back to this neighborhood, number 1 opioids, number 1 violence. As you can imagine, it was a really devastated neighborhood, but really great people. And so in that survey came out 5 things that they needed, kind of the Maslow hierarchy, but they needed safety, which the city went to work on. They needed affordable housing, which a number of different partners went to work on. We've renovated over 200 homes in the neighborhood. They needed health, access to health care, and so a health clinic was built on the end of the street. And then for the Reeb Elementary School building that sat there vacant, we raised $12.5 million for a public-private partnership. And inside that building, we are solely working on helping the people in the neighborhood find a job and helping people with education. So we have 14 different nonprofits, all located in one school building. It's super cool. I invite you to come down. We have a Pay It Forward cafe. We don't serve Donato's pizza, but we serve really great food. So you can come down and do a pay it forward, and you're able to take care of the neighborhood at the same time. We serve over 1,000 people in the building every single week. We've employed over 500 people from that neighborhood into living wage jobs. We have an elementary school building, 0 to 6-year-olds. 118 kids go to school there every day. And then we have Boys and Girls Club, and we serve 150 kids on that floor. But the main floor is for the adult. I could go on all day, I won't. But it's for the adult, and it's about helping people with mental health, drug and alcohol addiction, wholeness around their entire selves, helping them find a job, helping people that are have been incarcerated getting back out and into the workforce. So we have Goodwill, we do STNA training for nurses, we do coding for tech. But it's a great, fun community environment. I invite you to come have lunch with me any day of the week.
That
It's
is
an
awesome.
amazing
You
place.
clearly have as much or maybe more passion for that than some of your day-to-day. But what it amplifies is that you, one, used your voice, you amplified your voice, you had a vision, and then you were collaborative with the people in and around the city that could make it happen. So that's awesome. In terms of kind of that whole switching subjects, it's a little bit, but needing allies and people to advance to amplify your voice. One of the things we also hear about in the data is the notion that women need to be placed in P&L roles in order to advance to leadership, but there are more men holding those P&L roles today. All of you are obviously the business owners of your organization. So starting with you, Abigail, what advice do you have for women seeking that type of experience, the P&L, the frontline roles?
Well, I think actually the first part is actually getting women to even consider those roles. So I think that more and more women think they can be in support roles, communications, HR, they might be in finance roles. So they are, it tends to gravitate women to those roles. What I think my encouragement, and I think what we need to do as businesses, is actually look at the skills and the competencies that actually are needed for a business GM role, right, general management role, and understand its attention to detail, right, problem solving, curiosity, that level of intellectual curiosity, solving business problems. Folks that know how to think about the whole business, right, the entire organization and how all the pieces go together. And I think we need to encourage women to actually raise their hand and participate and get them that exposure. I just actually today met with a new marketing manager that we hired in Asia, and she's here as part of her orientation, and she said, well, what do you think I should do as part of my career? And I said, well, it's interesting. We're talking about that in a few hours on this panel. And, I talked to her about the idea of building her network across the organization, right? Don't just meet with your own function, right? Don't just meet if you're in marketing, spending time just with the marketing team, but how does marketing affect finance? Frankly, spend time with tax. Hard to believe all the things that come down to tax and how it impacts your business decisions. So really get to understand all the different functions. One, you'll have a lot more fun. Two, you're going to enjoy all the different people that are in the organization that make things happen, all the different functions that bring a business and organization together. And I know for me, speaking personally, that's what helped me with my career. I started in consulting with Accenture or Anderson Consulting, and I went to Wendy's in the technology field, and that was 18 years ago. And now I'm the president of international, right, and the chief development officer. How did you go from being a manager to a president in the business? And mainly I attribute to so much of my networking and spending time with different business functions. And then finally, I'll be honest, to the women in the room, raise your hand. I think I'd like to go and try that. And then someone's going to say, well, you know what? Let's talk about where the opportunities are that you need to polish up on. And you know what? That's part of feedback and development. Hey, look, you need to work on that. But I think that's where I think both people in leadership, men and women, need to really, seek those women and bring them into those positions. But also women raise their hand and say, hey, I'm not sure if I want to do that, but what would it take? What must be true for me to take that on? And encourage women, I think, to raise their hand and do it. And I think once you get there, I think you'll enjoy the opportunity.
Makes sense. So Brittany, was there ever a time that you raised your hand to do something a little different than you thought you would ever do?
When I went to culinary school, we had a really awesome opportunity with Food Network at the time, and I was doing a lot of live cooking demos on TV, and I thought, man, this is it really got me back into knowing, what I grew up with for so long. I loved television, and I loved just kind of being out there, but I also genuinely knew in my heart of hearts I was a foodie and I want to talk about food. But I was interested, but I really had to make a decision. Am I going to stay in the business? Am I going to follow this? And when I ultimately chose, my dad's like, that would have been a cool job, Brittany. But I know that he's excited to have me back into the restaurants. And so I guess that's probably was a big decision for me.
Makes sense. Thank you. So Lisa, we have a lot of data that also dispels previous myths about women leaving the workplace at greater rates than men, and also not seeking pay raises or promotions, not raising their hand. What are some of the most effective ways for women to not only prepare themselves for leadership, but to also position themselves and advocate for those leadership opportunities?
Yeah, so I think I'll go back to what Abigail said at the end. Asking, I think, is the biggest opportunity for females to make sure that they are aware about the opportunities and considered for those opportunities. And also looking around the organization to see, if you're in marketing, and there's an opening in finance, well, won't that be kind of interesting to explore? So I think those two pieces of advice are very, very telling. The other thing that I would add is, does your organization really focus on diversity and inclusion? So in our organization, we started a diversity and inclusion team. We have diverse panels that do all of our main interviewing. We have diverse bench, and we talk about our diversity bench and where we have gaps and how we're going to fill those gaps. And then for each of those particular people on the bench, what sort of leadership opportunities we can give them throughout the organization, what extra assignment, what their career path is, all of those types of things to make sure that we are prepping those people on the bench for the next position that they will have in our organization. And I would say that the other thing that's really, really critically important is the tone from the top, and making sure that the leadership at the top really understands that you make, and the data's there, that says more diverse organizations, more diverse teams make better decisions, give you better results. But that has to be something that is led from the top, and that your organization is focused on. You can't just wish that you could have better diversity. You actually have to be, to Jane's point, very thoughtful. You have to have a strategy around it, and it does take time. We have some great numbers, but we're not yet where we want to be. And so it's something that you evolve to where you want to get to, but it is absolutely the right direction for us. And I think that every diverse group needs to understand what their values are and what they bring to the table, and they need to ask the question of what opportunities are out there. And if this is my highest aspiration to be a president, then you do need P&L experience, and you should be asking for that.
If I could just compliment to that, I think, Lisa, is the point about talent and management. That's one of the things I think to be intentional is to have your organization, many of you are owners of businesses or involved in them, and thinking about being intentional around talent and org review. I think that there's one thing to say women should raise their hands. I also think that we as leaders have that responsibility to really think about where can you actually get people to do cross-functional assignments, because it is a big risk. And I will say, looking back, I think, on my career, and I'm sure all of us, we've had to take some of those risks and maybe do something that may be a bit uncertain, or I don't have that, background, I'm not sure. So I think having each of you in your organizations thinking about, on a regular basis, who are your top talent? Who do you think have the potential? They may not have the experience, but they have the potential, and they'll figure it out. I think that you will find that you will have actually more talent than you can imagine that really are ready for those opportunities. I also think your point about employee resource groups. I know for Wendy's, we started our first employee resource group was the Women of Wendy's, but then that gave actually permission to other groups to form. And we have now a WenGen, which is the next generation millennial group. We have our group around veterans and military, so all of our military network. We have a group on LGBTQ community, called WEQUAL. Everything at Wendy's is we, so WEQUAL. But those are the things that I will say. For example, this year we just reported our corporate social responsibility report, and we worked with the Human Rights Campaign and got 100% on our LGBTQ Human Rights Index, which is a huge accomplishment. But the reason we did that is because we worked with our resource group, and they gave us feedback around our policies. They gave us feedback around what we needed to do to develop them. So as leaders, we don't have to have all the answers. The employees, I think, will give us too. So that's what I would share, is it's not just, I think, knowing all the answers at leadership, but honestly looking to your employees and saying, what do you think you need? And they'll actually do a lot of the work, and they'll get energy and excitement, and they'll help you be the best company you can be.
That's awesome. And I think you two made a couple of great points as it relates to one, we do need to look creatively at what that next level of leadership looks like. Because we do hear a lot of excuses about, well, I couldn't find a woman, or I couldn't find a woman of color. They're there. It's just a matter of thinking creatively, which is to the second point. Women need sponsorship. Everyone needs sponsorship, but women more so than any than men need sponsorship in order to be able to succeed. So that makes a ton of sense. So Jane, you probably get this question all the time. You did Undercover Boss. What lessons did you take away from that experience that has either informed or changed your leadership style in any way?
Anybody out there see our episode of Undercover Boss? A couple of people. So we have Lisa. White Castle was also, I think, the first season of Undercover Boss. I do have a CBD infused drink by Tanisha called Wonder. It is not THC, it is CBD, so that is all right. If you saw the episode, we had a delivery driver decide to tell me on national TV that sometimes when he's delivering pizzas and he goes to a customer's house and they're smoking pot, that he partakes and smokes pot with them. So about 5 years ago, right, like it wasn't even talked about then, so, and it was in the state of Ohio, and it is not legal. And so I went into mom mode. I have 3 children and now 3 grandchildren. My son just recently joined our business. He's our 3rd generation. But I totally went into mom mode. I'm like, are you smoking right now? Are you high right now? Like, I am not getting in this car with you. Was kind of my first immediate, like, this is not good. And then later, as the show progressed, the producer kept trying to get me to take my wig off and go in there and fire him. And I remember, if any of you are familiar with the show, but we're standing out on High Street. It was at the Ohio State University. And standing on High Street, and 6 times with lights and cameras, it's 1 a.m, I'm tired, she's mean to me. And she's like, you need to go in there and fire him. And I just remember thinking, that's not what we would do. Like, we would never do that. We believe in second chances. 20% of our workforce are people that have been incarcerated and or have had second chances. And so it's not something we would do, but you can imagine you're emotionally worn down. And so fortunately, I had the fortitude just to kind of go back and say, and I'll say, what would my mom do? My mom had joined our organization, and what would my dad do? And lead with love. And for that, it was, you'll have to watch the show if you haven't seen it, but it was about giving him a second chance. And he went on to work for us for a while. But out of that show, I grew up in the business, so I've made pizzas a really long time. But what I learned was, even more so probably, everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. And my goal on that show was to find their story, not mess up on pizzas, but to find their story. And so what it gave us an opportunity to do, and for us, is our Promise Family Fund. So our associates all contribute to a fund, and then we have a committee of our internal associates. When an associate is going through, our team member is going through a hard time, whether it's an unexpected funeral or some healthcare issue, or they are homeless, that fund then goes through our committee of our team member associates, and then they disperse funds to help people. So out of that show came that idea. So we were only able to help them on the show, but we do every single year and every single day be able to give back to our own people, which has been really influential for us.
That's awesome. Thank you. I have a couple of more questions, and then we're going to come to you, the audience, for questions. So start getting your questions together. So, Brittany, Jeff Ruby Culinary Entertainment is also very community focused. So please share about your efforts to eradicate childhood poverty and why that's important to you in the business.
Sure, yeah. We have always been very charitable. I grew up, it's ingrained in my DNA that this is what you do. You take care of people, you love people, and we gave to many different causes at one point. It was like Oprah, you get a gift card, you get a gift card, you get a gift card. Everybody gets gift cards if you call Jeff Ruby Culinary Entertainment. 2 years ago, we decided we should probably be more strategic about this, because I think we could use our platform to really change the world. And in fact, I had a recent opportunity to share our 2-year strategy with my TED Talks. We need to plug that dam. And when you talk about opioids, you talk about re-entering citizens, and you talk about how important that is. Our most vulnerable kids, at-risk youth, are who we really want to take care of. So in Cincinnati, there's 3,000 kids in the foster care system. There's 440,000 in America. And so we've taken our time strategically to really understand all of the nonprofits in Cincinnati to see how can we work together. But we also want to take this model and scale it so that we can make a bigger difference in our entire country. And so foster care, really, my father never had a father figure who wanted to call him his son. And so for us, it made a lot of sense to focus on kids without parents. And we truly believe that if we can find
wraparound care for foster parents, and if you can wrap around the kids and give the resources, you don't even have to foster a child. You can literally mentor a foster parent, and the 50% failure rate for foster parents jumps up to 90% if you can mentor the foster parents. So I'm kind of on the same boat. I can talk all day long, but for us, it's being strategic, and I think that's for everybody. Everybody has something that's near and dear to your heart. It might be Alzheimer's, breast cancer, whatever that is. And what makes this world go round is when we can all get specific on what we're going to do our part to change the world. And so for us, for now, it's foster care that we think is going to take Cincinnati off the top 5 childhood poverty lists.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. That's awesome. So one final question from me, and it's going to go to you, Abigail. Okay. So advancing to the top as a senior leader takes a lot of bold action. Can you share a moment in your career when you took bold and decisive action as an executive ready to take it to the next level?
There have been a few, probably some good, some bad, but I would say the one that just comes to my mind, honestly, I hadn't thought about that even before here, was I'd been at Wendy's now 18 years, but at that time it was around 2011, and I call it an arranged marriage. You may have heard that Wendy's and Arby's combined up, and it was an interesting combination of two brands. And at that time, I gave a lot of thought about the company, I thought about my position, and I thought maybe it's the time to go. Like maybe it's not quite the place that's right for me. And I remember an old partner at Accenture had given me some advice, again, great role model, but I've now used it throughout my whole career, and it's been mainly asking myself every sort of 6 months to a year, am I having any fun? Am I learning anything? Am I growing, developing? Importantly, more importantly, as I get older, am I making a real impact, right? Am I making an impact on people's lives? And am I feeling valued, right? Am I feeling valued in what I'm doing? And it's at that time, I didn't quite feel like those answers were kind of being answered. And I remember someone seeing me at a grocery store, true story, an old marketing vice president, and she said, well, what do you think Wendy's should do? And I went on, well, this. This is what we should do. She's like, well, you should probably go tell Dave Karam, who's going to be the new, at that time, president of it. And so I did. And I knew him as a franchisee, but I didn't know him, as a new leader. And I thought I'd already decided maybe I'll make the leap, but I sat down with him and I said, David, I think we need a better vision for the brand. I think we need to rethink our image of our brand. We need to rethink about our quality. We need to, here are the things I don't think are going so well. Be careful what you say, because he said, okay, great, go do that. And I went home and I said, I was really kind of ready to kind of go make the next move. And he said, nope, let's. And that was essentially, I think, a big catalyst for me to take on a leadership role. I was his chief of staff and really supported the brand leadership team at that time. And that was actually my entree into learning more about the P&L and the business. I took on brand planning, and that led into exposure into what we needed to do to re-energize our brand. And that led to my suggestion to come to David saying, I think we have all this quality, we have all this investment in our food, and we're not getting credit for it because our restaurants look old and tired. And so you need to be able to have, right, all the things that impact the customer experience all say the same thing. We all know that in this business, that everything speaks. And so I went in and said, okay, again, another big bold move, but I think we need to spend a few $1 billion on reinvesting in our restaurants. And let's just say that didn't go over very well with franchisees. But we went through and actually worked collaboratively with our franchisees and with the brand, and now we're at almost 60% reimage. So I think you have to believe in your heart, believe in what's right, always do the right thing. And if you have the conviction and you believe in something, then go talk to someone, because if they don't listen to you, it might be actually their problem, not yours. So I think as long as you've done your homework and you do it professionally, of course, and you're prepared, I think that people will listen to you, because I think we all want to solve the right problems. We want to grow our businesses. We want to take care of people, and we want to make a great impact on our community. And if we can do that, I'd say go for it. But that was the real change for me that changed my trajectory.
Love it. We are going to go for it. So is there anybody in the audience that has a question for our panelists?
Hi, So it's super cool to hear that someone that starts at a company at age 15 can rise up in the ranks. I think in the food service industry with, people that are working the front lines, it's often minimum wage workers, maybe not have as high level of education. What do you do as leaders to give them, the metrics or feedback that they need to understand their progress and success along the way?
Well, I was going to say we probably all have that same story. I'll go first since I brought it up with the two that we promoted. I think it's all about making sure that you have the reviews in place, the performance reviews in place that set people up for success. And for us, that's tying in our core values. So not just what you get done, but how you get it done so that you can help them build a development plan. And so we start that as a process in the restaurants, but we also in the home office with our people every single quarter. We sit down and have our quarterly review of how are you performing, not just metrics, but also how are you behaving according to our core values. And I think those things then tied into, we do succession planning to say whether or not people are promotable with development, and the high potential people that we make sure we put a development plan in place with them to get them to that next level.
And I would say, in our organization, we're really proud of the fact that we have so many people similar to Jane's, and I'm sure Wendy's and Jeff Ruby. Out of our 450 restaurant leadership positions, 442 of them started behind the counter and worked their way up, which is a phenomenal stat. It's one of my favorite stats. And it's really, really important to us that we are giving people opportunities to shine. And I think the whole industry is that way, very, very much focused on, we get a bad rap for being entry-level job, minimum wage job, but there are so many opportunities in the restaurant industry to move up quickly, to get manager experience very, very quickly, that you can then take those skills and stay in the restaurant industry, or you can take those skills and go to any other industry and be very, very successful. So I'm really proud of our entire industry. I think we need to do a better job of talking about those types of things, but we're really proud of the stats that we have, being able to have so many people start with us. And I would say, I don't know the stat on this, but my guess would be out of those 450 people, maybe 10% of them went to college. So most of them don't have college degrees, which is even more fabulous.
Well, I think the other part of that too is not just working your way up through the restaurant and management, but also franchising. I mean, the thing about franchising is that you don't have to have a college degree. If you have the work ethic, you learn, you get skills, personal development, professional development, and you have a brand and multiple organizations that can lift you up, you can actually become franchisees. And many of our Wendy's franchisees were line cooks, right? They were working on the grill, and now they're doing very well. So they've been successful, and how do you pay that forward, and how do you give back and help bring the next generation? So I think absolutely at crew level, management level, as well as even business ownership, I think that's what's special about this industry.
And if I could just add one more thing, I think our restaurants are so underrated, to your point, is we have people in our restaurants running $1 million businesses.
Exactly.
They're running the P&L, so they're doing the finance, they're doing the marketing, they're doing the human resources, they're doing the training. They are running businesses. And so it's such an underrated position, but our general managers, as well as all of yours, are running $1 million, $3 million, $4 million businesses. And that's significant. And so we have the same stats as you do as far as 90% of our general managers that have worked their way up, and then don't have college degrees, but they have their masters, and they have their masters in running a business.
Are there other questions?
Hi, I'm Jess Cottrell. I wanted to piggyback on what you just started to say, Lisa. I have 4 kids as well, and something that I'm really passionate about is getting the word out that it's not just hourly jobs that are available, but this is a career. And what might start for you, like it did for me, serving, hostessing, whatever it was, can turn into this career. And I went on to get my finance degree and now, run restaurants. How do we do a better job as businesses and restaurateurs in getting the word out to the schools? I go to the high schools, I'll do the career days. We are so underrepresented as an industry. When I go, they just see it as a server job or something they can do in college. How can we do a better job getting the word out that our industry has careers, not just jobs?
I can take this one. I'm on the board for Cincinnati State Technical College. And one of the stigmas that I think we're trying to debunk is that we keep promoting, get a four-year degree, get a four-year degree. Everybody says, you know, this is what our children have to do when you have welders and plumbers and drywall making $100,000 a year. And so I think if we can get past ourselves saying that you should go into debt, you know, and I'm not saying college is bad, believe me. I'm getting my MBA right now. I believe in education 100%. I think, though, that we are driving people, especially our youth, right now to think that that's the only option. And I think the more that we can just talk about it in forums like this and say that technical schools are great, trade schools are great, getting into the restaurant business is a wonderful thing, and you have all this opportunity. I think that's the overall awareness, and talking about it is going to be a big first step.
And I will say our National Restaurant Association is definitely focused on that and is trying. It is obviously a hard message to go through the clutter, but they are definitely, our industry associations are definitely working on that.
And if I could give a plug to Cameron Mitchell, who's in the audience, working with Columbus State and Mitchell Hall. It's about us reaching out to the educators. It's about us making sure that we're talking and getting accredited hours. So I know that you've worked on that, and we're working on that. How do you work with our community state college and get accredited hours for the work that our managers have put in so they can build towards that degree? But we all have to have that voice, and it'll take all of us to make that happen.
Hello, Emma from JD's Kitchen, and I wanted to ask, how do you take your marketing brand to the next level and actually grow your business beyond just the neighborhood?
So in terms of marketing strategies, how did you bring marketing? I can maybe make a few comments on that. I think Wendy's, you know, we actually have a lot of effort around being around for a 50-year-old brand, not quite like 100 or, 57 years, but a long time. And what we realized is that we needed to create a new message, a new voice for the brand. And one of the things we did was actually go back. So you go to the future, you actually have to go back and look at what is our brand all about, what's our character, what did Dave Thomas really start the brand all about. So we actually went to character camp. We actually went back and said, what is all around? I know I have my Dave's Way book literally on my bed, my office table, but to go back, why was the brand started? And we actually started our marketing messaging around that, talking about who we are, what we do, and also incorporating that into our marketing messaging at the national level and now at a global level. So one of the things I think with my responsibility international is we realize that no matter where we are in the globe, we're still Wendy's. So how do we make sure that we stay true to who we are? And even on a global level of marketing, how do we go back to those core values? But I would say for us, we're having a lot of fun on social. This March 2nd, we're launching with breakfast here in the United States, and we've been having a little bit of fun on Twitter and of course on social media around marketing. And I think again, when you go and have a voice, you need to make sure you stay true to us, and that's what I would say is important to us from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, I would add one of the things that we are really focused on is listening to our customers and our team members. Most of our really good ideas have come from them. So you guys know what goes on Valentine's Day at White Castle. So you actually have to make a reservation, and for Valentine's Day, you do it on Open Table. And that started with a general manager in a store who knew that she had this couple that had come to White Castle a lot, and they didn't know where they were going to go for Valentine's Day, so she put a little white tablecloth, she put some flowers, she put a little reserve sign, she made a menu for them, and she served them on Valentine's Day. That was how Valentine's Day got started. And today, it's in all of our locations. We took 32,000 reservations on Open Table for Valentine's Day. And so some of the best ideas for marketing come from not the corporate office, but from our customers or our team members, as long as you're willing to listen to them.
Yeah, and just the only thing to add, I think, if one person has a meal, and this was before social, they're telling 10 people. Now it went from a dinner table conversation to a global shout. And so if the marketing will follow, whether you're small business, large business, CX, customer experience, for me, that is the best marketing platform that you could possibly have.
I would just add one more thing to that, is also what you're doing in the community. And that builds your raving fans. So how you treat your team members that treat their customers, but also how you're giving back in the community in which you're doing business.
Yeah, that's the 1-2 punch. For sure.
Absolutely. So that's your corporate brand, and then also remember your individual brand is just as important with the 1-2 punch as well, and making sure that you're able to continue to rise and thrive as women and men in this particular industry. Can I get you to please give a hand clap to these wonderful panelists? Thank you, ladies, so very much. I hope you guys enjoyed this time with us this afternoon.